While it seems huge on a map, and the Yangtze is indeed navigable 1,600 miles inland from the coast, the area of usable territory it empowers is less than that of the Elbe. Is the Yangtze useful and worth having? Of course. Transport along it makes central China far and away the most capital-rich part of the country. But central China is neither integrated with the political core of the north, nor does its own fractured nature do anything but complicate northern China's always vexing problem of internal disunity. The Southern Secessionists. Then there is the South, which is a world apart. South China is a riot of hills and mountains extending south from the same ranges that so hobble the Yangtze. Such rugged topography has the same impact on cultural and political unity and wealth as the rough terrain in Mexico or the Balkans. Very few coherent large powers have ever arisen in the south. Aside from a short stretch of the Pearl River in the far south, none of the many southern Chinese rivers are navigable. Making matters worse, southern China is sufficiently far south that it has moved fully out of the temperate climate zone that dominates North America and Europe. Most of southern China is subtropical, with the southern coast being fully tropical. Just as the diseases native to the tropics of India or Brazil have hugely slowed their cultural unification, the same is true of China. The northern Chinese coastline is flat, shallow, and plagued by sandbars. Natural ports are few and far between, and what few exist cannot support large vessels. Even in the rare instances when northern China was united, it only rarely engaged in maritime commerce. The south is the opposite. Its coastline is both deep and severely indented, allowing easy maritime access and egress all the way to the earliest days of Chinese history. Southern China sports the majority of the natural harbors of all of mainland East and Southeast Asia. Mix the good port potential with a lack of rivers, a host of mountains, and the enervating impact of the tropics, and you get a bizarre geopolitical mix. While the Han of northern China have always had problems penetrating the area, maritime-based foreigners have not. Southern China's excellent harbors back directly into rugged highlands. Just as that rugged territory limits northern penetration or southern consolidation, it also limits the ability of any local southern power to look to the sea. They just can't reach the coast easily. Instead of the excellent southern harbors serving the needs of Chinese, either northern or southern, they instead serve as the perfect perches for outsiders. The area has long been a foreigner's playground, but one in which the locals welcomed the interference. Trapped in small inland pockets by their geography, the southern Chinese regularly collaborated with the foreigners to access the outside world. So yes, pirates and traders have long enriched themselves along the southern coast, but the locals often participated in empire as a sort of surrogate or sidekick, with Hong Kong being the most recognizable example. As early as the 12th century, southern Chinese cities were importing over half their foodstuffs, largely via such collaborative links. Entrenching the sense of regional uniqueness is that the Han ethnic group just hasn't been able to scour this part of China free of non-Han as they have in the north. This is the portion of the contemporary state that is home to most of China's remaining minority and language groups. Southern willingness to work with outsiders and the region's ethnic heterogeneity has not gone unnoticed, or unresented, or unfeared in northern halls of power. But the real surprise of China is that the north, center, and south account for but half of China's 1.35 billion people. North, center, and south are China's lowland and coastal regions. The rest of the Chinese actually live in the interior. That interior is a smorgasbord of geographic diversity. Sichuan sits on the Yangtze's upper reaches, and so is somewhat integrated with Shanghai and the outside world. Inner Mongolia is partially barren. The mountains of interior Yunnan are packed with poor minorities. The wide open spaces of Tibet and Zhejiang, also minority-dominated regions, have resisted central control for millennia. It is difficult to find many generalities to describe such a grab bag of variation, but this one is close. Transport is an absolute nightmare, and so the interior is extremely poor compared to the coastal provinces, with per capita income roughly half that of the coast. What images the world of 2014 holds of a bustling, growing China simply don't apply to the interior. Like nearly all other interior rugged regions of the planet, this portion of China seems stuck in another age. Unlike the three coastal regions, the interior does not often dominate the day-to-day affairs of the Chinese nation. Geography keeps the interior population sequestered from the coast and one another, making it difficult for them to interact, much less set China's agenda. Yet there are still some 650 million people living there. Combine such populations with such poverty, and on the rare occasions when some charismatic figure can unite the interior, every part of China shakes. While Mao Zedong's effort at consolidation may have hit critical mass in the north, it was his efforts to mobilize the interior that set him on the path to leadership. Dispelling myths. One of the most unexpected results of this melange of geographic factors is that the Chinese are remarkably non-naval. Northern China was largely incapable of going to the sea right up until the technologies of industrialization allowed for the brute force fashioning of artificial ports. Southern China may have the harbors, but it is so rugged that it lacks much in the way of hinterlands to turn them into ports without extreme amounts of resources. Resources that didn't exist in large enough local concentrations until industrialization could stitch the area's various population centers together. That just leaves central China, where Shanghai is a world-class city and world-class port in any era. However, the territory that Shanghai controls is very small. Upriver Yangtze cities are well beyond Shanghai's reach courtesy of rugged ridges, while Shanghai itself often falls prey to the power and interests of the North China Plain entities that tend to view international trade as more of a threat than an opportunity. This tripartite system, Northern China as the stable-as-glass political core, Central China as the nationally disinterested economic core, and Southern China as the potentially secessionist territory and the interior being largely ignored, holds to the present day. Even contemporary China's political system reflects this. All of the critical military branches of government are headquartered in the north. The north and central regions trade off the premiership every decade in order to balance security and trade interests, while the south is not even represented on the Politburo. Such a geographic look at the country lays bare the greatest myth about China, that it is united. I'm not talking here about the concept of the mainland versus Taiwan, red China versus white China, but rather the idea that the mainland itself can ever truly be a unified